Hi, I'm Aaron Johnston, and today I'm going to talk to you about Next Step, an operating system that was developed in the 80s and 90s, and one of the core reasons why Apple was so successful. In 1976, Steve Wozniak invented the Apple I computer. He showed it to his friend, Steve Jobs, who suggested that they sell it. This small interaction sparked the trillion-dollar company Apple Incorporated. For 9 years, Wozniak and Jobs dumped their time, energy, and entire lives into Apple Incorporated. Because of this, it became one of the most successful computing companies of their time. However, 9 years after the start, Jobs had some major disagreements with financial stockholders of his company, and because of these, he decided to resign. That same year, in 1985, Jobs invented the Next computer and started that company. They used Next Step, an extremely powerful operating system. It was all cutting edge, but one problem. It was too expensive for the average person to obtain. For 12 years, Jobs was away from Apple and working on his Next computers. In 1997, Apple saw the true power and potential of Next computers and offered Jobs $400 million for his company. Jobs accepted the offer and went back to work for Apple. When Apple bought Next, they incorporated much of the Next Step operating system into their own products. And it is because of this that Next Step has become a core component in iOS, watchOS, and many other Apple products. Oh, hi again. So, I previously made the claim that when Apple purchased Next Step, they incorporated much of the company's ideas in their own products. Well, let me give you 3 actual applications of that. First off, the dock. Whenever Next Step users repeatedly used an application, they were able to click and drag that application into the dock, which was a utility that stayed centered permanently on the screen. Instead of having to work their way through messy file paths, they were able to simply click on the dock and that application would open by itself. Another area that Next Step incorporated in macOS is reimaging and resizing photographs on the fly. It used to be that whenever you moved an image on your screen, it would create a wireframe and then reload that image in wherever you clicked your mouse. No longer with Next Step. The images would stay with your mouse and resize as you dragged the mouse with you. One final application of Next Step's powerful integration into macOS is how they show their file paths. Let's say, for example, I want to see a homework folder on my computer. I go to Education, Junior Year of College, Operating Systems, and then Homework. And if you see here at the bottom, it shows the entire file path that I took in order to get to that location. This is thanks to, you guessed it, Next Step. So what are some uniquenesses and strengths of the Next Step operating system? Well, first off, Next Step uses what is called the mock kernel. This is widely considered to be one of the very first microkernels, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later. Another unique area of Next Step is the fact that it was an object-oriented designed operating system. This allowed for a superior complexity while maintaining an ease of use for the developers. 3 strengths or fields of application that Next Step excelled in is server use and networks, application development, and system administration. Oh, hello. Just doing a little bit of housekeeping. So, let me talk to you for a minute about the mock kernel that Next Step operating system used. Now, the mock kernel did work in terms of threads and how it scheduled those threads. There were 2 states that a thread could exist in the mock kernel: suspended and runnable. A suspended state meant that it was waiting on or actively blocked by another thread. A runnable state meant that it was currently running or had already been scheduled to run in a future date. Now, there were 3 scheduling priorities that the mock kernel implemented for its threads: time sharing, interactive, and fixed priority. For the sake of time, I can't get into what all those exactly mean, but it's important that you realize that the mock kernel was taking into consideration the most effective and efficient way of scheduling its threads. Another important aspect of the kernel was its virtual memory. Now, obviously, it supported virtual memory, or I wouldn't be talking about it right now. But not only that, it supported pages and differing page sizes and differing page protection values. So, for example, if you wanted one page size to be 100 kilobytes and another page size to only be 1 kilobyte, you could do that on a per page basis. The same with the protection values. If I want one protection to be higher, I can change that specific page's protection values. It implemented this by independent and dependent memory sections. An independent memory section had knowledge of all the other virtual memory around it, while a dependent section only had knowledge of its own virtual memory. One of the most important aspects of any operating system was the I/O. Now, a main aspect of I/O is the driver kit. NextStep's driver kits were based off the Unix driver kit, but with some major improvement. Here are 3 benefits to NextStep's driver kit architecture over your standard Unix kit architecture. First off, drivers were objects in NextStep, which makes them much easier to work with. Secondly, each device driver defaulted to only one thread, the I/O thread, which accessed each hardware device. And lastly, interface methods in the driver were invoked from the user method. Now, this is a completely non-exhaustive list, and if you want all the reasons, you can go to the developer's documentation and see those for yourself. But I hope this just gave you a little bit of a taste as to why NextStep's operating system was a next step above all the competitors. Oh, hello. I hope I was able to convince you of NextStep's sleek, object-oriented, innovative design. Steve Jobs' work on the Next computers truly led it to be one of the most cutting-edge technologies of its time. Apple Incorporated would not be where it was today without Steve Jobs, the Next computers, and even more importantly, the Next operating system.